It's always business time when we talk with Brett Dolan from Touchdown Radio and Razorback Sports Network and Perfect Game and Halftime as well. And he's back on the call for Touchdown Radio this Saturday with Cal hosting Miami. Brett, how you doing? What's new today?
Hey, guys, always good to be with you. Love talking some football, and we're in kind of a weird week, it feels like, of big-time games this Saturday. But now that we flip the calendar over to October, I guess we'll have some fun. We'll see what this month brings us.
Yeah, I know the next 2 weeks you got games out west with Cal and Miami. You got Penn State and Southern California next week. Does that mean you stay out west for the week?
I wish. I was thinking about Miami's travel this week to Cal and back, and they're going a day early, and I'm like, it might just make sense if I was doing this on ESPN TV or whatever to stay. But no, I'll be coming back on low sleep on Sunday. But it's unusual because for all of these years of doing these games, we'd go out west maybe once a year, and most of the time we're loading up on SEC and even a lot of Big Ten games. And this year, I have Big Ten games. They're all out west, which is bizarre to even kind of comprehend, but it's the new world of college football.
Brett, what's your biggest win so far this year? Was it Alabama beating Georgia? And give me your top four. Like, is it so far out of the realm to say your top four is Alabama, Texas, Tennessee, Georgia? I mean, could they all be SEC teams?
I think so. And I know we're going to see some cannibalization and teams start to knock each other off. I think if you evaluated quality of talent right now, and obviously that doesn't always equate to the ratings, but you would have to put an Alabama up there. Georgia looked good enough on the road in defeat to where I don't believe they're going anywhere. I mean, they've got tough games. They could lose 2, they could lose 3, but from a talent standpoint, they're probably as good as anybody. And Texas has been really consistent, good up front as far as kind of jumping into the SEC, ready to play on both sides of the line of scrimmage. And, Tennessee, I've been on the Tennessee bandwagon all year as far as, and I know they were ranked 6th, 7th, 8th, but I felt like they were kind of a top 4 type team. So I don't see why not. It's going to be tough for some of these other conferences to kind of creep in unless we see a lot of losses like we did with Ole Miss losing at home in some games where teams probably shouldn't but do. But, it's really an SEC-dominated stretch up top, and it may continue for quite some time.
It's got to be important for the ACC, for Miami, to just keep winning football games, because right now it doesn't really look like anybody else in that league. It could be a true contender across the playoff landscape. So this one at Cal is funny because I remember asking you, why did you pick this game to begin with? Because Cal is not one of those teams that you'd expect to get, a national game, and Gino picked it to have Miami. But it turns out it's a pretty good game, isn't it?
We remember having that conversation when we did kind of our schedule reveal back in August, because you kind of chuckled at it, and I did too. And my partner and my boss is a San Francisco native and a Miami Heisman winner, so this game kind of has his worlds colliding, and yet it's college game day going to Cal for the first time ever. So it has a pretty good prominence this weekend. And you're right as far as the ACC. The only way they get 2 is if Miami continues to win, and maybe Clemson keeps winning and knocks off Miami in the championship game, and they get 2. Otherwise, they're probably looking at 1. But right now they're happy to have one team kind of carrying the banner, and that team darn near lost last week to Virginia Tech on a wild play at the end, and one I'm still not sure I understand with the replay and whatnot and where the football was, but it does create a little bit of excitement. It's strange, though, when you think about this game, Phil, because it's going to start 7:30 Pacific time. That's 10:30 body time for the Miami Hurricanes. Game day starts at, 6 a.m. on the Pacific Coast, so it is going to be a long day of football for a market that doesn't have quite the passion that the SEC markets do. But I guess the game's sold out. It's going to have a fun feel to it.
Brett, you got some good ones in the SEC this week. Which one of these 2 games do you think there's a better chance for an upset? Missouri going to College Station to play A&M, or Ole Miss headed in to Columbia to play South Carolina?
Ooh, good question. I think those are the 2 I looked at earlier today, and you're like, you know what? If these games were played in a different place, if they were played in Columbia, Missouri, or not Columbia, South Carolina, and Ole Miss. They probably don't generate a lot of attention. But I'm curious with that Mizzou A&M game. I think we realize that A&M's got some talent up front on the defensive line, and on their offensive line, they're maybe a little bit low on playmakers. Could they win at home? Can they sustain this? I was getting on an airplane the other day with the Mizzou assistant coach, and he was coming back from recruiting, and he had his gear on, and I turned to him, and I didn't say hi or I didn't introduce myself. I just said, "You guys have been living on the edge lately." And he kind of rolled his eyes and said, "Yeah, you know what? We're hanging in there, but they've not been as explosive as they were last year, despite the fact they've got many of their key position players back." So I'm curious with that game. Mizzou has a chance to kind of right their ship if they can look impressive and get a win, but it wouldn't surprise me if that was a slug, physical 2017 type game late in the fourth quarter.
I think Ole Miss ought to watch out, too. I mean, it didn't look like they were ready for Kentucky. South Carolina can move the ball on you. I mean, we know a couple of those guys. It's funny, too. I was looking at the availability report that came out yesterday. It's almost like Lane Kiffin is trying to plant the seeds of fake injuries during the game. 25 Rebels are on the availability report. 25 of them. So you could be like, hey, this guy had a sore hamstring. It's okay if he just drops in the field in the first quarter with 7.5 minutes left.
Right,
it's 3rd and 2. He knows what he's doing, right?
Probably. I mean, I think it's a good aspect for college football to have these injury reports. How teams manipulate it and how they kind of rig the system, I guess we'll find out. I did tell you last week, though, I thought Kentucky was a lot better than they played against South Carolina. You can't make an excuse for that game. It was awful. But I watched them, and I'm like, this is not a bad team. This is a team that could win some games. I didn't have them winning in Oxford, but it certainly didn't surprise me that they kind of wore down. They were the more physical team than Ole Miss, which kind of likes to play fast in a basketball style and doesn't always like to slug it out. So it didn't stun me, but that was a good win for the Wildcats for sure.
Brett, you know, one of the stats that Phil has gave me is Tennessee hasn't trailed yet in this game in this season, and in Arkansas at home, you kind of want the crowd to get in it. You kind of need to get a lead on them. You got to do something to kind of make them uncomfortable. Do you think this Arkansas offense can score 28 points on this Tennessee defense?
Well, it's going to be tough. I mean, you know, the defense is so good. I think your point's a good one. If you're going to score early. If you're going to take a shot downfield, don't miss it. I mean, the margin of error is not huge against a team of Tennessee's caliber. There's a couple of numbers that jumped out at me as I'm looking at them defensively, and I don't have them in front of me, but they're TFLs. And, I mean, it was 30-plus as far as their tackles for loss. That ought to be a code-flashing red right now for Arkansas that has had a hard time protecting its quarterbacks and sustaining yards on the ground at least last week. The other thing is the number of yards they rush for per game and what they allow. It's like a 250-yard difference. I mean, you can't let them run for 250, 300 and only be able to run for 50 against them. That's a recipe that won't work regardless if you're not turning the ball over or turning them over. And then we'll see how Iamaleava plays. I mean, he's only he had one start last year in the prestigious Cheez-It Bowl, which I was able to see for his first start. So he hasn't been on the road a lot. I thought he played okay, and he was fine at Oklahoma in Norman when they were jumped out to a big lead and kind of played that game on their terms. But there's a lot of things that Arkansas has to do really well, and they have to avoid the big mistakes to kind of hang around and see if that crowd can become a factor and maybe just get a little bit of that magic of forcing these teams to be effective every week when they're not at home playing in front of 100,000 of their own fans.
Let me move to baseball with you real quick here. As the Astros run over 7 years in a row in the ALCS, 2-out against the Tigers, and I don't know anybody who saw the Tigers coming the way that they did in the last few weeks. But the Astros run over, or do you think they got a little more left in them?
They might have a little more left in them. I think that they've sustained this run longer than anybody else. I mean, we saw it with the Rangers last year. They won a World Series, and it's hard just to get back, just to get into the postseason, let alone continuing to get back to American League Championship Series. They've continued to hit on players that don't cost a lot of money, but the longer you have this track of success, you've got to pay people. They're paying Verlander an obscene amount of money. They paid a closer, Josh Hader, a ton of money for a team that didn't have enough closing opportunities. And now they got to figure out, can they pay Bregman? Do they want to give a big deal to Framber Valdez? Kyle Tucker sitting out there. These players get to that arbitration time or that free agency time, and they want their money. And it's hard to make enough dollars go around to fill out a roster. They've done a great job of it to this point, but I think it's getting a little bit harder as they get deeper into that, and it's something teams like the Dodgers and Yankees from yesteryear have tried to do the same. You can be competitive, but to win World Series or compete, it's tough. But yeah, how about those Tigers? That was something else to see them go in there and win both games and finish off what was a wild last 30, 45 days for that team.
Who do you? I think Phil. I think you had Baltimore and Philadelphia. I had Atlanta and the Yankees, and I think we both are now. Now Baltimore is out and Atlanta's out. But who do you got? Who do you got winning the World Series this year?
I have Philadelphia in it too, and I know it's not a difficult pick. I was curious in the American League because these teams were a little more rested. Boy, it's a good question. I would probably lean Yankees. I knew it for a while that I didn't feel like the Dodgers, despite their talent, were in that pole position because they're dealing with too many pitching injuries, and they've got to play a really good Padres team. But just to kind of name drop, I mentioned this earlier with you guys, probably back in the summer when I had a chance to sit in Dave Roberts' office this year. He looked at us in kind of an informal way, and he said, "Wouldn't it be great if the Yankees and the Dodgers were in the World Series? Wouldn't this be great for baseball?" It would be, but, I think to get one of those two teams in would be tough, let alone both. I don't think that'll happen.
Man, I mean, I kind of want to root for San Diego because that's the only team they have left. They just had the Chargers taken away from him, and I think that city supported the Chargers just fine. It's just ownership wanted a new stadium, and they were going to get themselves a new stadium no matter what. When you listen to the broadcast or you hear the final call and everything, it's like San Diego, it's always been a good baseball town, but now that's all they've got. And the Padres, I saw this just a moment ago, they're trying to do everything they can to limit the number of Dodgers fans that get tickets at Petco based on credit card billing addresses. They're not letting any residents outside San Diego County, Southern Orange County, Western Arizona, and Vegas to buy any tickets. Like, they're doing what they can so the Dodgers fans don't show up. And that's a great rivalry. Like, Padres-Dodgers has become a spectacular rivalry, and it's even better than Giants-Dodgers.
Well, it is. I mean, this was the first year in the season series that the Padres did better than the Dodgers. I think a lot of people that don't follow it every day would just like to see Ohtani get a chance to play on the biggest stages in the most games so that we can see him. But the Padres have been a great story. They tried to go for it a couple of years ago. It didn't work out. They cast a few of their players aside. They actually were better this year. The fans have been incredible. That does not have a Southern California laid-back feel watching that game at Petco on television. It's a great atmosphere and a really good home field advantage. And sometimes I feel like you actually benefit by playing a couple of games when the teams that have the bye sit and wait for 5 or 6 days to play their next game. So we'll find out, but that'll be a lot of fun.
Brett, have a great call this weekend in Berkeley. We'll look forward to talking with you next week. Thanks for your time.
Always a pleasure, guys. Love it.
Thanks, Brett.
Brett Dolan, Touchdown Radio, with us each Thursday here on Halftime. New specials at Fish City Grill as we get into the month of October. You're going to want this. Shrimp creamy pesto pasta. It's a bed of fusilli pasta with creamy tomato basil topped with fresh Parmesan, artichokes, spinach, and cherry tomatoes. You'll get a load of grilled jumbo shrimp brushed in herb butter as well with that. Green Goddess shrimp tacos is stuffed with blackened shrimp, slaw, and a special Green Goddess dressing, pickled red onion, and cilantro. You get Cuban black beans and rice with that at Fish City Grill. Still great patio weather. Great place for date night, 479-636-8833 if you want to call for pickup or delivery. That's Fish City Grill at South Bellevue Road in Rogers and online at fishcitygrill.com. 877-377-6963 to get with us on Halftime, and we are back in a moment.
This is Halftime. You can now download our new app in the iTunes or Google Play Store. Listen anytime and anywhere on your favorite mobile device. Just search Hit That Line now.
Bet Saracen is Arkansas's #1 mobile app for placing sports wagers.
There's big news in the mobile sports betting business. Bet Saracen was just named the 15th largest sports book in America. That's because Arkansans like to do business with a winner. Find all your winners on Bet Saracen. Download it today and look for my RR prop bet specials. I pick them, you win them.
Bet Saracen is Arkansas's favorite sports wagering app.
Gambling problem? Call 800-522-4700.
Today, football is a game of sound. What if you can hear your coach's play calls? What if you couldn't hear the referee's whistle? For deaf and hard of hearing athletes like me, these what ifs are a reality. But with the AT&T 5G helmet, now we can see play calls just like the other teams hear them.
Connect the player, change the game. Learn more at att.com/5G helmet. Connecting changes everything. AT&T. AT&T is a proud supporter of the Gallaudet Bison AT&T 5G helmet, not for sale.
You're listening to Halftime Live from the Crabtree RV Center studios. Crabtree RV Center, where RVing is life.
Get ready for the biggest, baddest, most epic music festival of the year. The Peacemaker Music Festival.
BetOnline is your #1 source for all your betting needs. Get the latest odds, lines, and matchup reports for baseball, boxing, golf, and more. BetOnline continues to be the fastest and easiest way to place your wagers, including live betting and your favorite casino and card games available to play right from your phone. Head to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today and get in on the action. Remember to use our promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet online, where the game starts.